8 o'clock.
Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, everybody. Yes, you have more of a good story coming your way in just a moment. Forget Free Harry. It may have to be Free TC. First, may I recommend that you subscribe to the Smerconish.com daily newsletter and turn on a friend. Also, subscribe to this YouTube channel. Ring that bell if you want to be notified anytime that I'm live and on YouTube. Tax season, today's March 1st. Tax season is upon us. Did your financial advisor pay close attention to the tax consequences of every financial and retirement planning move that you made during this past year? The professional financial network part of Mercer Global Advisors, they did, and they help you understand what taxes mean to your bottom line. They'll structure a financial plan for your unique situation, but only if you ask them. The planning is tax-centric, and state-of-the-art tools are used to formulate a customized plan. They're on-staff CPAs. They'll help you out, but only if you call them. 855-558-3500, 855-558-3500 for my friend Steve Cordasco, the Cordasco Financial Network. That's a trade name owned by Mercer Global Advisors. Investment advisory services are offered through Mercer Global Advisors, Inc., an SEC-registered investment advisor. Securities provided through Andrew Garrett, Inc., member of FINRA, SIPC. Consultation with your personal tax professional, that's always recommended. Time now for the headlines, more of the headlines from Smerconish.com, the daily newsletter. Ron DeSantis had a soft launch yesterday. It was the release of his book. We had a lot of fun on the program yesterday trying to rename the DeSantis book. But it's pretty much paint by numbers in terms of him doing what one needs to do to announce for the presidency. I pointed out yesterday in my conversation with Selena Zito that Ron DeSantis could have released the book in March. It's now March. He could have released the book in April. He could have released the book in May. I think the reason that he released the book yesterday is that he wanted to lay down a marker and freeze out the fundraising abilities of Pompeo and Pence and Nikki Haley and anybody else who might get into the race, because he's not anticipated to announce his formal candidacy until June. And the strategy that I see DeSantis using and many of the others using is to kind of serve notice that they want to run for the presidency, but they want to hold back and keep their powder dry and see what happens with regard to these investigations of Donald Trump. At different points in the last 6 months, it has looked likely to me that Trump would be indicted. 4 really different buckets of investigation that are looking at Donald Trump. One is the Alvin Bragg, Stormy Daniels hush money investigation. You've got the Fulton County District Attorney looking at the perfect phone call and more relative to Georgia. You've also got the investigation by Merrick Garland and Jack Smith into both Mar-a-Lago and the events of January 6th. But the thing about Trump is that the guy's got 9 lives. And just when you think there's a straightforward case against him, like something happens that potentially gives him a get out of jail free card. So, for example, I remember saying here on POTUS that I thought that the case for obstruction of justice against him relative to the classified documents found at Mar-a-Lago looked pretty straightforward. Never knowing that both Trump's Vice President Mike Pence and that current President Joe Biden would themselves have classified document issues. Are they apples to apples? They are not apples to apples. But it's enough to give pause to a prosecutor who's got to contemplate whether they have a case they can win. Okay, so then in terms of, and we had a poll question on this at Smerconish.com. We had a poll question recently where I said, which of the known investigations is most likely to be an imminent threat to Donald Trump? And there was consensus that it was Georgia, it was Fulton County, it was Fani Willis. And I thought, yeah, that looks like a pretty straightforward case. And we knew that the grand jury had recommended charges against some unknown named and number of individuals. But again, that which you can't anticipate, here comes the jury foreperson, and the jury foreperson says more than she should have said in the public domain. And now you say, did he get another get out of jail free card? So it's very volatile. It's very fluid. And against this backdrop, the latest numbers from Emerson that show that Donald Trump holds 55% of the Republican primary voters. This number reflects his standing in the January Emerson poll as well as the June Emerson poll. A quarter of Republican primary voters, 25%, say they're for Ron DeSantis. That's a 4-point decrease since last month when he was at 29%. Now, maybe we're splitting hairs when we're talking about 29 versus 25%. But the point is, Donald Trump continues in a variety of polls to be, the person to beat, with about half of the GOP electorate locked in to support his candidacy for the nomination. So we'll see. There's a lot going on. One never knows where it's moving from one day to another. On the Democratic side of the aisle, Joe Biden at a 44% job approval, below water, as we like to say, but on the uptick. Poll results from yesterday. Where do you think COVID originated? The lab leak or wet market theories, 3/4, 74.35% said they believe a lab leak. 25.65% said wet market. I don't know if he voted yesterday at Smerconish.com, but Christopher Wray, the FBI director, had a sit down with Bret Baier at Fox News and said the COVID-19 pandemic was likely caused by a lab leak in Wuhan, China. Quote, the FBI for quite some time has now assessed that the origins of the pandemic are most likely a potential lab incident in Wuhan. Today's poll question at Smerconish.com, is student loan forgiveness fair? The takeaway from court observers, SCOTUS blog, Adam Liptak in the Times, Robert Barnes in the Washington Post, the usual and very erudite observers of the court think that the Supreme Court is poised to deal a blow to the administration's student forgiveness program. Something interesting that I pulled from SCOTUS blog, it was this, Amy Howe. Some of the court's conservative justices had concerns about what they saw as the fairness or lack thereof of the loan forgiveness program. Roberts described a hypothetical situation, and it's funny because a lot of callers have said similar things. Roberts described a hypothetical situation in which one young adult takes out loans to go to college while another young adult starts a lawn care business with a loan from a bank. Statistically, Roberts observed, the college graduate is more likely to be better off financially, so why should the government forgive his loan but not the loan for the business owner? The question of how to spend the government's money, Roberts continued, is a question for Congress rather than the courts. Well, we've had similar hypothetical discussions. What about the individual who went to trade school or didn't go to any school and isn't getting any kind of a break in comparison to the college grad who now is going to have loan forgiveness? Does that seem fair? That is the poll question today at Smerconish.com. So lots going on this Wednesday, but nothing more important than getting a wellness check from TC. TC, have you? Let me just remind from my perspective, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
So bright and early this morning, and by the way, I put this in Instagram, but bright and early this morning. Actually, today at 7:02 a.m.
To be clear, I had already been in there for a half an hour at that point. Go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, TC, your employee. There should have been a comma there, but I think this was an excited utterance. Good morning, TC, your employee is stuck in an elevator. This is elevator technician. To which I responded, what? Please rescue her. To which the reply was, we have dispatched the fire department. They are on the way now. She's stated she's claustrophobic, so she's nervous, but help is on the way. Do explain the short version.
Well, luckily, first of all, I'm not claustrophobic, so that was the very lucky part of it. But yeah,
Fake news.
The one day you're not here, I get in the elevator.
Right, I'm in Washington. Right. Just to remind, I'm at the mothership.
Right. So I get in the elevator, and it goes not even up. I think got stuck between first and second. So this big jolt, which I went, oh, and then nothing, just stopped. So I'm like, okay, all right, well, I'm sure it's going to go so I try to open the door, nothing, nothing. It's all nothing. So I didn't know this, but there's a help button. So I call the help button and they connect me to a live person. Did make me nervous when she asked which state I was in. That was a little slightly alarming. So the tech was going to get sent out. So I wait 5 minutes. I look at my phone, and you'll recall, from going up and down these elevators, Michael, that there is no service in the elevators. So once you
inexplicably,
right,
true.
Exactly. So I had no service. So I call them back, and so finally they said the tech's too far away. We're sending the fire department. And I've told you this whole story. The fire department having there was an issue with the fire department and the elevator techs. There was a little friction, not sure who was in charge or who was doing it right. No one could open the door to the second floor to slide it enough for me to slide out because I was stuck between floors. So the solution was, after over an hour stuck in the elevator, no internet, no show prep, no one knew where I was. Thank you to the elevator tech. Angel is his name, who finally texted you. They opened one of the panels on the roof of the elevator, lowered a little ladder down. I went up, then one of the firemen had to come down and hold the ladder. Then I go up the ladder on top of the car, on top of the elevator car. Then there are 2 other firemen in there, like 8 or 10 firemen total. I step out finally. They're filming. I'm filming. You can see it all on my Instagram
You're
story.
Filming. I love it.
At TC Skornovaki on my Instagram story. It was unbelievable. They were very happy that I was okay going up the ladder, that I was okay stepping over they were very happy I was competent to do all that. So it was quite a morning. Not how I expected to start the morning, for sure. Especially when you're away, Michael. There's added, I want to be on. I want to be and I couldn't even tell you where I was. What did you think? Were you what's she doing? What did you that's the thing that's so funny to me.
I had to look at it. I had to look at it twice. I didn't know originally. Good morning, TC. Your employee in an elevator. Is an elevator.
So you thought it was to me.
It was an eats, shoots, and leaves thing.
Yeah.
I sent it to Dan, and Dan said, "Is it Alice, our newsletter editor?" I said, "No, it's TC."
Yeah.
I've asked you before. And look, this is a news program, TC. So put your emotions aside and just work with me. Did you pee?
In the elevator? What are you talking about?
I mean, you were in there for over an hour.
You know what? I held my own. Let's just put it that way. I held my own. Okay. Thank you for asking.
Did you dig into snacks in that gigundo purse of yours?
I did.
Were you settled in for the long haul?
I was my hand to God, Michael, you were this is true. Once I decided that I wasn't going to plunge to the basement and die, then my second concern was Michael is going to be angry, be pissed, not know where I am. I was so worried about you. You were my concern. So just think about that for a second, because that, my friend,
was I your lifeline?
That's a problem.
Was I your lifeline because the technician was in direct contact with me, and at a certain point he called me and he gave me the secret elevator number.
Yeah. So all of a sudden
you can communicate with her.
All of a sudden the red light comes on where I've been talking to the technicians, and this voice comes out, and I was like, it took me a second to realize who it was. And you're like, I just want you to know that it's been really nice working with you. I was like, oh my God, thanks. What's wrong with you? Was this the best thing that ever happened to you? I think it was.
No, I was very concerned. We were all very concerned.
Very
The
concerned.
social media world was all very, very concerned.
Very concerned. Yeah.
But you survived.
I survived. People are enjoying the elevator being lowered down. The ladder being lowered down into the elevator car. You can watch all that on my Instagram. And yeah, that's there's a lot going on this morning.
We are the first ones in our building. So I imagine nobody else was around.
Nobody else was around. Oh, you know me. I'm like pushing the alarm button, like, hello, hello.
But and the lights were on, right? The lights were on inside the elevator.
The lights were on. At some point, they cut the power to try to see if they could open the door, but the lights stayed on. So the lights were on. It was fine. Yeah. Wow. I mean, just wow. There's a lot. Just a lot.
I mean, and here I am. I came in thinking I was the one with the interesting story to tell today, but you win. Can we do one more piece of business, because I want to close the loop on something?
Please.
Okay, so I've spent a lot of time in the last few weeks, but especially the last 2 days, talking about Fox News and the revelations from the Dominion lawsuit for defamation against Fox. And I won't repeat the things that I said. The POTUS audience, I think, is well versed in what these issues are. But I found this interesting because I pride myself on welcoming all telephone callers. Frankly, you're going to be moved up the line on a busy, busy day if you're saying something not in a snarky way, but in a disagreeable way about my view, because my belief is that no one wants to listen to a talk radio program that is simply confirmation of whatever the host happens to say. And I've been critical that other programs aren't run that way. Therefore, I was surprised when I heard that a caller, and you know this better than I do, TC, because you've heard the audio and I have not, that a caller got through Hannity's program and essentially held his feet to the fire for all the things we've been talking about, namely that the hosts knew the election fraud claims were BS, but allowed them to be perpetrated nonetheless. Help me explain this and roll the audio.
Yeah, so I'm going to roll the audio now. He did get through, and it's interesting. I don't listen to Sean Hannity on the radio, but he first said, like, it's a liberal caller. We're glad to have him, and they had a conversation, a couple-minute conversation, and then the caller, Ralph is his name, said this.
You knew the election wasn't stolen from Trump, and you guys lied about it anyway because you felt you had a good reason.
No, if you listen to what I said on the air every day, what did I talk about? Let me remind you. I talked about laws being violated. Partisan observers, for example, most states have laws that partisan observers get to watch the vote count from start to finish. In 2020, they were 100 feet back. They were 1,000 feet back. There was no accommodation to uphold the law that allows partisan observers to observe. I made the case about Pennsylvania's Constitution being violated because the Constitution in Pennsylvania, it specifies in great detail the only people that can vote by mail. Now, instead of going through the arduous process of getting a constitutional amendment, state legislators decided they just would pass a law. Well, that's not how you amend the Constitution, by passing a law. So they went the unconstitutional route. Now, a lot of courts didn't want to take up these cases, but I'm just telling you the truth. In the case of Wisconsin, the Chief Justice of the Wisconsin Supreme Court, that was a 3-4 case.
I get it. Right. So I mean, there had to be
an answer.
And it goes
on and on and on.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh, well, you knew he had to be prepared to offer some kind of response because inevitably, sooner or later, somebody was going to ask him about it. What I'm not hearing is a discussion about how Sidney Powell was put on air to primarily on Dobbs and Bartiromo's programs. And meanwhile, behind the scenes, you had Carlson and Hannity and Laura Ingraham and others all buzzing and saying, this is nuts, this is BS, she's crazy, and we can't be associated with this. And you've got Rupert Murdoch under oath, saying it's not about red, it's not about blue, it's about green. That's why I allowed Mike Lindell to be on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, as I say, there had to be a response, but that one's not going to cut it, at least for me. Lots of other news, lots of other headlines. They're all laid out at Smerconish.com. Please subscribe to the daily newsletter. It has never looked better, and it's never had more subscribers. Frankly, everywhere I go, I love when people say to me, hey, I enjoy it. It's free and it's worthy. And I start my day at 8 a.m. Philly time by looking at all those aggregated headlines that you have painstakingly pulled together. So vote at Smerconish.com on today's poll question, which simply asks whether student loan forgiveness is fair. TC, we almost dispatched from the Kensington Volunteer Fire Department of Maryland. We almost dispatched Dan.
Dan would have rescued me.
To have to come up there and rescue you.
Amen to that. Amen to that. I would have loved it. He would have gotten me out
final
sooner.
Final thought, if I might, TC, is please make sure it's fixed by the time I get home. I will see you soon, and I will see all of you tomorrow.